All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to 180 Degrees of Impact. My name is Matt Scott, and today I am here. Hi, Maura. How's it going? Maura Kolkmeyer is joining me. Hey, how's your day going so far?
So far, so good. It stopped snowing here in New York briefly. Winter kind of came with a vengeance. Everybody was so excited about the 60 and 70-degree days we had in October and November, but now it kind of came with a vengeance. So, muddling through, but with snow comes the holidays, and I love the holidays, so it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, it's a beautiful time of year, and I'm a little jealous in DC. As I was mentioning before the interview, I was just up in the New York and New Jersey area, and we don't have the winter wonderland that you have. So I hope that you're just taking it in. But I think, as you said, like it's holiday season, and it's also looking ahead to 2018, which I actually didn't think about this before the interview, but perfect person to talk to as a future builder, entrepreneur, someone who could tell me what I should be doing in 2018, essentially.
Well,
But a lot of pressure.
a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I think overall, I always do a horrible job at introducing people and explaining what they are. I did leak or preview the fact that you're a future builder, but I'd love if you could introduce yourself for the 100 Degrees of Impact audience.
Yeah, so it was actually interesting. Before you started the broadcast, we were actually talking. You had said something. You're involved in so much. You do so much, and I get that a lot. And traditional employers, that's usually a knock, which is that kind of interesting because I'm pretty young for a lot of what I'm involved in or have been involved in. And really, I'm just super grateful for all of it to start off with. And before I even dive in to talk about me, I want to thank you for taking the action to actually do something like this and put out positive pieces of content. We need to really turn up positivity in today's world, and we need to suffocate out all the negativity. So I love that when you reached out to me, I was like, absolutely, heck yes. I don't know if I can cuss on this platform.
You
Um,
can do whatever you want. It's fine. I say it goes. Everything goes.
I want to be able to support people like you however I can, beyond just in this interview too. So I branded myself a future builder because that's the common thread through all the things I do. So currently, one of the main things I do is strategic consulting around future trends, foresight, and futures work. Meaning, what that means really is looking 2, 5, 10, even further out years ahead at the marketplace, society changes, traditions, the way, specifically, let's just take the United States, because when you start to go global, it gets a little more complicated. So looking at the United States marketplace and specifically more consumers has been a lot of the focus of my work lately, especially at the company I'm at now, which is called Kantar Futures. Looking at the U.S. consumer and understanding what are the drivers and trends that are shifting the marketplace, and then how do companies, Fortune 500 companies, both in the consumer space, tech space, financial space, adapt to that? How do they profit from the change? So what we help them do is really three things. We help them understand. So we help them understand the data, who the customer is, what does that look like as far as just the basic data. Let's get a grip on understanding the problem and how we might attack it. Next, what we help them do is anticipate. So what are those changes at the macro level that are then going to trickle down to more tactical changes they can make to their product, their service, their business, things like that. So we help them anticipate that. The next thing we do is help them shape it. So help them shape, what does that mean to them, right? So that's great. You're telling me that this is the trend that we're seeing is changing. I understand what I need to do. We're anticipating the future trends and the future impacts, but what does that matter, right? So the why me, so what question. So that's the shaping aspect where we're saying, okay, now we need to tailor it to you. Um, so that can be for a company, an apparel company, such as let's say Gap, helping them understand what are the macro changes in the consumer marketplace, which can vary from technology to just even political and other issues, and then help them change their business to be able to profit from that. And so that's largely the work I do. So when I say I'm a feature builder, that's very on the nose of helping really companies and organizations build their futures. Some of the work I also do is with higher education, helping them revamp a lot of their alumni programs, but also understand that higher education is in a bit of a predicament right now. costs are skyrocketing. Students are seeing lower outcomes. And so they really need to adapt and change not only how they brand, and a large part of building features is just brand, and understanding how to communicate that. So I love doing that work. A lot of that work is really just a passion project of mine, but it's also a great learning opportunity. But really where I coined that phrase was my own business. So I have an entrepreneur bite to me that bit me early. I started a company in college that helps connect local families with local college student babysitters, and we call it Sitterly. So Sitterly came from actually the kids that I babysat. One night they said, Maura, it was cool how you were a babysitter, but now you're a part of our family. And I just felt my heart just open up, and I fell in love with the kids and the family. They helped me get to where I am today. The father who actually that I babysat for mainly, I now work at his company. Um, so there are so many different ways relationships help you build your future, which is another thread. And so at Sitterly, what we really help do is help the college student who needs to work part-time to get their way through school build their future, in a sense of, we're going to help you find part-time jobs that are beneficial to you. You're going to help you build your network. We're going to help you find internships. And oh, by the way, when you're no longer a college student, we're going to help you bridge that gap to real life. We're going to help you become a successful professional. So we're helping you build your future all along the way. And that brand, building futures for Sitterly, really came out of my experience. And I started to hear all these different stories of other people, going on vacation with families that they met, staying with them over the summer so they could work at an internship in the city. I just started to notice, again, seeing those common threads and patterns and trends, to take another word that I've used a lot already, and build something around that. So that's where my brand came from. And then going back a little bit further, I did work for a few years in DC, which is how you and I ended up meeting, at Booz Allen Hamilton, where I did a lot of strategic planning and strategic communications for the Air Force. That was looking at the Air Force as a whole and understanding, where are we going to be in 20 years? What does that mean for our Air Force, for our airmen, for the soldiers, for the families? And that, I honestly, people are like, how did you get into that? I'm like, totally luck, right? However, I can also trace back my experiences, my successes thus far, to specific people in my career, in my personal life, academic life. That really helped me build my, really internalize and taken on that only common thread between all the work I do. I do freelance stuff. I'm now working at a real corporation and having an marketing and brand new entrepreneurship thing going on. So there's a lot of things I do, and a lot of mentorship with college students, which you and I met at GW. So when an answer of saying, I take my brand of building futures very, very seriously, but also, again, from a branding perspective, helps me communicate how all these different things that look different into one thing, which is why I love to talk to people like you who are doing the same thing. You're helping people see positivity. You're helping people see that you can make an impact, and then bringing people who do make an impact. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that totally answers my question. And I think the biggest thing I'm curious about, because you kind of just started to touch on it. So like I've thought about this a lot, like when you do a lot of different things. So you have your job, and then you might, like, or I'm saying in my case, like, have my job, volunteering in a couple places, and then I have 100 degrees of impact, which is my second job, and then everything else I'm involved with. I always think to myself, like, how does it tie together? Do you have like certain, I guess I'm wondering if there's certain like values that have motivated you to do all of this work that you're doing that tie it all together?
There is, yeah. And so the past couple of years I've actually been full-time on Sitterly. And when I was full-time on Sitterly, I had this amazing opportunity to have a lot of space, a lot of head space to think about all of that, and really define that and communicate it. I think, first of all, we're in a society of just change and technology in which you have the ability and the luxury to try a lot of things. And it doesn't really cost you that much. 50 years ago, your grandmother couldn't start something new because there was no convenient way to do it. You know what I mean? So you're able to do things at a rapid pace. You hear that cliche like fail quickly. You're actually able to do it nowadays, right? So if you want to go try and learn something and a little ways in, you're like, this isn't really giving me energy. Okay, then move on to the next. So for me, there's a lot of things I failed at that didn't work out, right? That I'm like, oh, I don't like this. And you kind of move on. But I think for me, what I really started to do, it goes back to, you mentioned core values. Because more and more professionals, young professionals, and I talk with young professionals about this, especially the college students, is helping them build their brand, their personal brand. And I mean personal brand, not in a sense of you're a YouTube star. I mean a personal brand in a sense of somebody knows what you stand for, what you do, and why you do it. And I started to, there's a great book, and I can send you the link if you want to send it out. Um, and in the back chapter, I'm forgetting the name of it, I'll remember it in a moment. It's called Peak Performance. Peak as in Peak. Chapter 9, I believe, helps you walk through your purpose. The biggest things I can mention is that they talk about your purpose is going to change. And what it kind of builds off of some of the Simon Sinek work of Start With Why. That was the basis of me really understanding why do I want to do any of this, especially working with the Air Force. I started to see a tension between why am I here? Is this what I want to do? And that for me, it's kind of hard because it gets so tied into your personal story. So I was really sick with Lyme disease for a few years. And well, actually, I just was told that I'm positive again. So I'm kind of going through that journey again. There's a lot of things happening in my life, but through that experience of being basically nothing, everything was shutting down. My career was kind of on a ledge. My health was just gone. I was barely functioning. Insurance wasn't covering anything. I was going through a lot of pain. I lost all my social connections because you're too sick to do anything. And I didn't understand why. I didn't know why I was sick yet. And so through the pain of that recovery, I started to have the question you just asked of like, why? What happens when, you're 22 and you have to write your living will and ask yourself those very existential questions you should ever have to go through. However, it was probably the most important exercise I've ever been through. So I literally wrote my living will. What happens to my assets? What happens to my body? What happens if this happens? Da, da, da. So, and rereading that made me really realize that the relationships I'd had with the kids I babysat, with the families I babysat for, my own family, made me realize that's what really mattered. And it was those moments of where I would see my impact on those kids of helping them learn how to read, giving them bath, giving them dinner, and seeing how just our day-to-day relationship would grow and grow and grow. Then I took a step back and was like, holy crap, I'm teaching these kids how to read. I'm going to be forever a part of their memory as a child. That's a big freaking deal. They were teaching me about responsibility. They were teaching me to appreciate my own parents to a degree that I can't even describe. And so that was the first thread that I was like, this building features thing. Not only are they helping me, I'm helping them. And then I took that into my own career of seeing how good managers, give you the flexibility and leeway. I have been very, very lucky. I have worked with great clients. I have worked with great managers who trusted me and built me up. So I started to think to myself, where I started to be in a position of like, how do I now give back? Which is where I started to reach out to the recent grads who are just honestly lost. It's not their fault. It's nobody's fault. It's not our generation's fault. We're educating people for a world that doesn't exist anymore. And so there's a huge chasm between getting your degree, whether that's a four-year institution or a community college or online. I don't care where, but there's still a chasm between that and then being a successful professional. And so I started to really look at why I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and that peak performance book helped me really put it down on paper of what are your core values, where do those intersect, and then that becomes the story that you tell through all of it. So I was like, that's what I am. I'm a future builder. That can apply to more of the economic business consumer side of helping people see macro trends. That applies to personal branding, helping people communicate and build their futures. Then it's also like, I really like to refer people and see people be successful. In college, I was the person throwing the parties. I was the person connecting people, and I loved seeing my friends succeed. I got so many different people's jobs. And when people were like, hey, I'm looking for a job, do you know anything? I'm like, yeah, I know a family looking for a babysitter. Here you go, which is how the business started. So if you want to go like all like when you go back to the very root, it was literally me just wanting to see people succeed. I loved connecting people, and part of that's a personality trait. And so the past couple of years, I really started to cultivate that self-awareness because I had the flexibility to do so. Um, so core values and your purpose and self-awareness, if especially if you're at the beginning of your career, it matters throughout, but really take some time. And I don't mean an hour a week a day. I mean weeks, months, if not a couple of years, really, really thinking about that. And I'm happy to help people walk people through that, because what I did was kind of took all these different sources and used it, and then kind of realized and put together. I did put together some content. I just remember that it's like a vision sheet, only for your personal brand. So yeah, values are a huge thing, and that's what really matters nowadays. Everybody has the cred, everybody has a degree, everybody has the certifications. But what's going to set you apart is how you communicate why you want to do what you want to do, and also it helps you realize what opportunities you actually want to pursue. Right? There's a lot of things. So your brand becomes a lens for you when you look out into the marketplace and you have offers coming at you. Some may be lucrative, some maybe not. But if you put them on the lens of your personal brand, you're going to go, I don't know if that fits with why and what I want, right? So I've said no to a lot of things for that reason. But I've also said yes to a lot of things for that reason too. So
Yeah, I think it's powerful because just thinking about, I'm really curious to, in one sense, learn more about like tangibly like the things that you do, but also like the motivation that's pushed you into like actually pursuing your passion. So for instance, like I know with starting Sitterly, like I'm curious, I guess I'll frame this in a different way. So like I talk a lot with one of my friends, Eric Dowds, who he has an organization called Diabetes Abroad. And when he was 16, we were in high school together at Seton Hall Prep. So Seton Hall Prep's, university connection there. But yeah, but Eric was diagnosed when he was 16. And it's really interesting because in his words, as you could probably imagine, his diagnosis with this disease, and that in his own words, like every day he has to inject himself with this potentially deadly like substance. Like, it changed how he approached life. And you did mention earlier on like Lyme disease, and I'm curious how that has like factored into how you decided to live your life and the passions that you pursued as a future builder, as an entrepreneur, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And kudos to your friend. I think a lot of those folks who live with something like that are undervalued because of the grit that they have to go through. But also it's amazing to see a lot of the advances that are coming to help those people. My experience with Lyme disease, I also was born with a cleft lip and palate, which is a genetic birth defect to the face. I'm not in great lighting, but I have a scar on my lip and really all over from, I think, 12 surgeries, reconstructive. The fact that I'm sitting here with you today speaking the way I do, meaning I don't have a lisp, I don't have a nasal tone, I have no learning disabilities, is actually a miracle. So I wake up every day thankful, one, that I'm not in pain. For many, many years, I woke up in just excruciating pain and fatigue. And to be able to speak, look, and smile the way I do, I'm extremely blessed. So people talk about grit. Grit was in me before I was born, right? And I also have great gratitude for my parents. Without my parents, I would not be here. They sacrificed tremendously to get me the right doctors, the right surgeons, the right care. I'm sure I only know a fraction of what they've done for me. But as far as Lyme disease, without that experience, I guarantee you my entrepreneurship journey would not have started. Um, it started before it. However, you hear the term refiner's fire, which is a term of either a blacksmith or a goldsmith sticking a hunk of gold or iron in the fire to refine it and heat it up so it's malleable. I use that metaphor because Lyme disease was the fire that made me better. It burned away really all the bullshit. I started to realize what was truly important. I started to realize who was truly important. I lost a lot of friendships, but honestly, I'm not worried about it anymore because the people who truly matter stay, also family. It taught me more about myself than I ever thought. And it also taught me more about my body and medicine and food that the education I got through that, through functional medicine, which is a whole nother ball of wax, set me up for the rest of my life to thrive, right? But I'll caveat that with, I literally just got a phone call a week ago that I'm positive again. So that's a whole nother track of basically I have to go back through treatment again. So I'm not nearly as sick as I was. However, if I let it go, I will be. So I'm kind of coming off of that wrench in the wheel. But when you talk about what set you on a trajectory, for many years, I was very, very, very sick. On an entry-level salary, I was going from work to doctor and having to deal with just how do I do this, you know? And that's still the question in my head is how am I going to do this? But the real answer is you don't know. You just know you're going to do it. So I took that lesson in the entrepreneurship after I got my health back. I was feeling fantastic. And let me be clear, I am healthy. I am not sick. Lyme disease is one of those things that, to it, it will take you down. So this was back in probably 2013, and 2015, I started to feel fantastic. The doctor was like, yeah, you're negative many times over. You're looking great. I'm like, I feel great. It's like, you know what? I'm going to quit this full-time job because to lose. So I quit Booz Allen to go full-time on Sitterly. And was it scary? Yes. But you have to remember my perspective was like, I just got my life back. What's the big deal? You know what I mean? And I left on very good terms. Internally at Booz Allen, things were very good. It had nothing to do with screw 9 to 5. It had nothing to do with that. It had nothing to do with the company. It had nothing to do with the clients. I just said to myself, if I don't do it now, when am I going to do it? I had nothing to lose. And that's the mentality that I got. It was like, well, a lot of things don't matter. I'll tell you a quick story. So I was just coming out of probably just starting to not feel pain, which is a weird way to phrase that. But I remember I was coming out of treatment, and it was one of the first weeks I remember being free of pain and more like myself in years. And I'd gone for a run, which was a miracle in itself. And because I'm a runner, I'm active, hence my outfit right now. I'm currently moving, so all of my laundry and things, it's just been kind of a wreck. But anyway, so I had gone on a run. After my run, I broke the screen of my phone. I was like, shit. And I went, you know what? I don't care. I get to go on a run. I don't care. And so I go and get ready for work. I'm like, I'll deal with it later. I go and get ready for work. I walk out to my car. My car has a nail in it. My tire's flat. I'm like, shit. This is all the same morning. I'm like, oh, but you know what? The tire's not flat yet. I could just see the nail. I'm like, okay. You know what? I'll deal with this after work. It's not a big deal. I'll take it. They'll pull the nail out. They'll plug it. We know the deal. Okay. So after work, I take it, and they're like, okay, yeah, we pulled it out. Everything's good. I'm like, okay, great. So everything's fantastic. So I go back in my car, and now my driver's side window won't roll down. This is December in Virginia. My window needs to roll up. And I'm like, what the hell? So I go back in, and I'm like, hi, sorry, the window won't go up. They're like, oh, sorry. And I'm like, how much to fix that? Because something was broke in the mechanism. They're like, oh, I don't know, let us take a look. And they couldn't fix it, and they couldn't fix it. And so this whole time I'm thinking, who cares? What's the big deal? I just had this whole new perspective of like, not that big of a deal. Use big and large curveballs. And I was like, I don't care. I got to run today. I feel great. I got to go to work. Like, I'm okay. And so that's kind of a small example of the perspective I took, which is still, don't get me wrong, it's still hard to keep. But when you dive into entrepreneurship, the curveballs, big and small, get bigger and they come faster, and then they come faster and faster and faster, and there's nobody else really to help you. Um, so I took that perspective, and it helped me through the entrepreneur journey, which I'm still on, obviously, to really just take the challenges in stride and say, okay, what am I going to learn from this? And I know that's kind of cliche, but the truth is, the more you flip it and say, hey, all right, I've got this big problem, but I'm alive. Most likely I'm in America. I'm doing okay. There's a roof over my head, right? So taking the stresses and just kind of turning that down a little bit is just saying, hey, I'm okay. It's all going to be good. And then I still carry that through in the work that I do now. As more opportunities present themselves, it becomes more of a challenge now to say yes or no. But I try to keep that perspective, especially now that I have the diagnosis again. Don't get me wrong, I had a brief of a breakdown, but it becomes, okay, what am I going to learn from this, right? What did I do wrong? What did I do right? How am I going to move it forward? And so you'll probably start to see more stuff come from me about that journey, to share it. I think it's more of a benefit to give back. And so that's my perspective, is I'm always trying to look at things of, how can this benefit other people if it's painful, right? Do I have the guts to share it? And then also, a lot of things just don't matter. You know, I've had servers crash. I've had people lash out at me on email. You know, I've been told all kinds of stuff. And for me, I'm like, that angry email means something's wrong, which means I need to fix it, right? So don't get all caught up in like, oh, someone's mad at me. Like, it doesn't matter. So yeah, I would say it's that grittiness for anybody. Everybody has a story. That's the thing. Everybody's like, oh, I've never really been through anything hard. I'm like, wait a minute. You just told me that you came over to America. This happened with a student. She's like, I don't know how to talk about myself. I'm like, okay, tell me about yourself. She goes, oh, well, I came here from Colombia when I was 14 and I didn't speak any English. I went, stop. I was like, are you kidding me? So this girl not only was a breadwinner for her family, taught herself English without any help from the age of 14. She got a degree from a community college, and they got her BA from Seton Hall. I just went, stop. I'll hire you right now just from that story. But it wasn't on her resume. She didn't talk about it. And I was like, I'm not telling you to like tell your life story. I said, but that's something that make people remember you. And so everybody has those stories, small and large, of grit, something they've gone through that's hard. The challenge is, and it's not easy, you know, the challenge is, how do you package that in a way that's powerful and helpful and may even benefit you financially, right? Um, that's a challenge. And the specific example for me is, how do I take my battle with Lyme and turn it around in a way that's beneficial to other people, cathartic to me, and then maybe lead to me having speaking opportunities and things of that nature. So my entrepreneur brain is always running, of how to provide value in a lot of different ways. And a perfect example of all of that is just keeping at those challenges is, you know, a whole series of events had to happen in order for me to just be sitting down in front of you, right? Grit's the number one thing. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, Google it. There's a couple of great books. But grit is the biggest thing. And I think everything you were telling me your friend went through, and you've probably gone through, when you say that's kind of like the biggest thing. It's the biggest foundation, I think.
Yeah, I think it's powerful, because I'm thinking, like, approaching this interview initially, I was thinking like, Maura has all these things that she's doing, and that you know, all of these, you know, whether it's your work that you just started, or whether it's with Considerly or so on and so forth, like, that's one lens to look at a lot of people. And a lot of people I talk with are like, you know, when I have interviews with them, I'm really focused on talking about that, because you have a lot of whether it's entrepreneurs or change makers who are less motivated by a personal story and more motivated by like a passion to do something, which I think overall, it seems to me from everyone I've spoken with, that like everyone's motivated by that passion too. But I think what's powerful about you is that you're a really great example of someone who has I keep thinking this one phrase, but I don't know why, but like turn your mess into your message. And I mean, it like that's one thing that I've heard from a lot of people where like in the case of Eric, turning his mess into his message. I'll say like in my case, like as like in a way that's completely different, like as someone with a nut allergy, I've had a number of times, like including probably almost exactly a year ago where I had a like bad reaction. I had a reaction where I was like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm gonna do because I was mid travel on a flight, like this is my life and this could be like the end of it. Then I think of with your Lyme journey, I think of this amazing woman who I've been able to work with over the last couple of years. Her name's Kristen Honey, and she works in the White House. She's been there since 2015, still doing like great work in terms of policy and civic engagement, but like her passion is like Lyme innovation. So like using her story and her struggle. And I just watched a couple weeks ago, just watched like a really emotional talk that she gave where this person who I know from a completely different context was like on stage, very emotional, like telling her story, like, and I'm sure that you know it and you've experienced it or like are even experiencing that as you're saying. And I like it speaks to the fact that whether directly like addressing Lyme or whatever your struggle is for, let's say for whoever's watching, or like indirectly using that as motivation, it's really important to like recognize the power of that in your life. Because I think you know, one thing I've realized is like, oh, everyone has their worst, right? Like, so if you meet, to tie in Sitterly, for instance, like if you think of like a little kid, like, you know, and this time of year, let's say that you tell them that like I don't want to, I won't, I'm not going to say too much about Santa because I don't know who's watching, but like if you tell them about Santa, is how I'll put it, they might have like a massive like breakdown and panic, and they'll be holding on to that for a while because that's like their worldview. And the one thing I'll say, like um, from my perspective at least, is that with my nut allergy and like having been to the hospital or having had those moments where I'm like, crap, what's gonna happen here? Like, am I going to be okay? Like it really helps you appreciate what you have and kind of get, you know, it helps you also like deal with the smaller things so that when you have the moments that are like, Santa, you know, isn't real. Like, you know, you kind of are able to take those in stride a lot more easily. Which I guess kind of leads into a question um, like what are some of the other like uh, what are the impacts that you've seen specifically in like facing the challenges that you've had as an entrepreneur? Do you find that it like certain aspects of entrepreneurship are easier because of your struggles and things you've faced?
There's nothing easy about entrepreneurship. I think our society right now is putting entrepreneurship on a pedestal, which worries me because there's a lot of people out there that probably think they're entrepreneurs and they're not because they don't have that grit. Grit cannot be taught, and that's my opinion. And I know that's going to probably piss a lot of PhD people off. Um, it can't be taught, and I am not advocating putting yourself through something pain for the sake of pain. What I'm saying is America's getting soft. I'm sorry, we are. And I am extremely lucky and grateful for all the challenges I've been through. But I've also had the right environment and people around me that have helped me transform that into something positive. It's not that easy to do it. It's not. Um, and I think having that grit and that ability, it actually made me thrive and love challenge. Uh, and when I say love challenge, like I'm almost masochistic. Like my one of my current a colleague of mine was asking me, what kind of projects and accounts do you want to get put on? And she was looking more for like, I want to be with financial or health. Like she was looking for like a category. I said something like the ones that are most challenging and forward thinking. I gave her a really consultancy answer, but the challenges with entrepreneurship can't be categorized. Like it's going to be one after another, and it's hard. There's a lot of days where you want to quit. There's a lot of days where you're like, I'm really sick of being the punching bag, right? But when you have other experiences in your life that give you that perspective, like you were talking to, and I'm just super grateful that I have the ability to do this. The fact that you and I are sitting in front of screens talking to each other, and you're in DC and I'm in Jersey, that's a freaking miracle. Are you freaking kidding me? You know what I mean? So it's that level of gratitude. And a lot of people kind of laugh at that, but I'm like, I don't care. Do you have any idea how lucky you are? The amount of free shit in our society today is astronomical. And so when you take that perspective of entrepreneurship, you're like, holy shit, there's all these resources at my disposal that I can go after and piece it together, just like you've done with 180 degrees of impact, right? So you're using Google Hangouts, you're usually in all these different platforms. But if you were to sit back and go, man, I could never do that. I don't have the resources. Well, you're not trying hard enough. I'm sorry. And so the grit piece for me is just, it's so important. And let me be clear too, there are vast majority of people in the world have been through far worse than I've ever been through. So that's the other piece of gratitude that I have. And I'm like, holy shit, my life's pretty damn good compared to a lot of people. You know what I mean? And so the grit for me ties into the work I do with Sitterly, of how do I build the best product. We're going through a lot of challenges right now. We're self-funded. I came in contact with a lot of sketchy investors and sketchy people, and I finally said, stop, I don't want to deal with this. And I also started to spend way too much time alone as a sole founder. And you hear that term, you're the average of 5 people you spend most time with. Well, I looked up one day and went, I mean, a lot of time by myself, which was beneficial for a time. Because like I said, it gave me that ability to think about the self-awareness piece. But then I got to a point where I was like, am I still growing, or am I going to start to reach a point where I'm kind of plateauing? And I said, you know what? I need to take advantage of some of these opportunities coming my way, which is how I landed at Kantar Features, because I need to be better. And what's going to make me better is my own journey and my own decision. I need to not listen to what other people are talking about. And in order for Sitterly to be better, in order for all of my work to be better, I need to be surrounded by people that are smarter than me, more talented than me, and grittier than me. And so I saw that opportunity and I said, that's it. Because it fit with my brand, it fit with my why, and it also was going to be basically the sharpening stone on me to make me better. But I also obviously could bring a ton of value as well. So that was the calculus that I made to go from full-time entrepreneurship to part-time again, which is an anathema in entrepreneur land, right? I basically committed the cardinal sin of entrepreneurship. Um, and I'm okay with it because it's my decision and I don't really care what other people say, because there's a lot of startup founders out there that are not very humble and they're probably failing on paper but putting up a big show. And I will be fully transparent. Like Citterly has a lot of challenges right now. We're self-funding, which is really hard. Um, and I decided to take the slow growth track. I would rather make an impact.
Would Sammy come to the front desk? While they're searching for you, Sammy to the front desk.
Sorry, Sammy has to go to the front desk.
It's okay. Yeah.
So when I think about the impact that I want to have, back to kind of the theme of this, is I said I want to be able to have a higher impact on an individual student, an individual family, and make those connections more than saying I grew Sitterly from X to X, right? We scaled too fast. I started to notice scaling too fast was starting to impact the quality. And I was like, you know what? I'm okay with taking that punch on the chin and saying we need to go back to our base and what we know best, which is the Jersey market. We need to make sure this is 110% before we blow it up. So I learned a lot of entrepreneurship lessons in that. There's a lot of failures in there, that somebody smarter than me could have said, hey, Maura, what about this, right? And so I learned a lot of lessons there, but the grittiness aspect helped me continue to move forward, right? I was just like, okay, that didn't work. Maybe we should do this and not get caught up in it because it doesn't matter. You know, I'm happy. I share my mistakes with the world. I share when we have bad months. I share when I've made a mistake. Even my interview at Kantar Features, it was not my best showing, and I had to own it. I'm really having to prove myself. And I honestly, I chalked it up. I was just freaking tired. you know, and I made a call, I made a judgment, and this has happened in all of my work. Sometimes you make a judgment or a call, it doesn't work out as well as you thought it would be. But you have to own it and go, okay, next time I'm in that situation, that's what I did. This is what I need to do instead. So at Citterly, yeah, it meant instead of scaling up, trying to scale up really fast, we needed to kind of turn back in, figure out what worked, focus on the individual people. I want to get more testimonials, like Debbie, who said she was able to earn her master's degree because she found a sitter through us. And that sitter then was able to attend an internship because they let her live with them for the summer. Those stories are what drive me. And the reason why I haven't taken investor money is because as soon as I take investor money, I don't care about the testimonial. They want to see a return. So by keeping it self-funded, I'm able to keep ownership of that and take a lot of risks that other people wouldn't want. Concerned about the testimonials, more concerned about those impacts. I'm more concerned about my ability to impact, whether it's pro bono clients or real client, paid clients, than I am about anything else. And so that's the perspective I take, but that takes a lot of grit. And it's not easy. And then you throw in kind of just everything else that happens in life, whether it's, you know, Lyme or family stuff. And don't get me wrong, like a lot of it, because I do so much, it takes me away from my family a lot. That's I think the part of entrepreneurship people don't talk about, is the toll it takes on the people around you. Because when you're spending so much time and headspace out here and your family's over here, they're like, come back. And you're like, I can't, there's no switch. I wish there was a switch, but there's no switch to turn it off. And that's what I'm always thinking about is how do I create the best impact? How do I create a testimonial? We literally measure testimonials. Testimonials are our KRAs or key result areas. Everybody in the company, which is less people now because we've automated some stuff and we're changing the model, that's what we focus on. I will tell them the revenue and user metrics, but I don't want them focusing on that. I want them focusing on those in-person interactions to make a quality connection. So building futures in everything I do is about quality connections and relationships. And the more you know yourself and your story and where you come from and what you want to do and why you want to do it, you'll be amazed how quickly it all comes together. So a perfect example is you just telling me about your friend who works in the White House who also has a connection with Lyme. So it's amazing how when you share your transparent story, all of a sudden you start to attract exactly what you need, right? It's amazing the things that'll come out of the woodwork, especially for me, like randomly on LinkedIn. You know, I'm literally just sharing what I'm doing, and something randomly will come, whether it's a speaking opportunity or somebody who wants to work here. Everybody I've hired has been through word of mouth. And the way you do that is being by open, transparent, and honest. And a lot of people are like, oh, it's so amazing. You have this, this, and this. I'm like, back the train up. I'm like, I have not made it yet. You know what I mean? Like, I am still on this journey, but I'm willing to be vulnerable and say, hey, this is really freaking hard. I'm making a lot of mistakes, and it probably looks better than it is on paper, but I'm trying to make that seem more realistic of like, I've said no to a lot of family vacations. I didn't go to Hawaii over Thanksgiving. I ended up getting sick anyway, so it kind of worked out. I have said no to a lot, and that causes issues, but I think it comes down to communication too, which is a big learning thing for me. I just assume people know things, which is a big weakness of mine. So I try to over communicate. And whether that's with Citterly staff or our customers or with clients, managers, people I'm mentoring or my mentors, I think there's the grit aspect, but then there's also being able to just communicate. And that takes practice. It takes a lot of practice. But yeah, I appreciate you telling me that story about your friend though. However I can help.
Yeah, I think one thing so you mentioned telling your story and how important it is. And it's important for a number of reasons. One, like to get people on board with what you're doing, it's important to tell your story. And one thing that I've learned is that when you open up and you for instance, if someone genuinely asks you like, how was your day, and you tell them like, you know what, like it was like kind of a crappy day, like that often gives them permission to open up if they didn't have a great day, to talk about what's bothering them. And that's just one example, but I think you sharing your story is a great example of that. And speaking of your story, I guess I have like one last question, which is, if your life and your story were a book or documentary, at least to date, what would the title be and why?
I would say, so for me, a lot of the catharsis for me and creativity, I do write a lot. I haven't published a lot of it, but I keep a journal and I write a lot. And I think one thing you mentioned before I tell you my title, was, being honest and transparent. But I think it's super important. Being honest and transparent doesn't mean you get to rant and rave and complain. You know what I mean? Or vent. It means, I'm not having a great day, but I'm super grateful that I had a hot cup of coffee this morning. So I can't emphasize enough what gratitude does. Not to mention, I can show you scientific studies that it actually increases all of the happy hormones, but gratitude is just such a big deal. And one of the biggest things I ask Citterly employees on their report, I don't like to say employees, Citterly partners, is I say, what are you most grateful for? And when I get to read through those and we share it on Skype calls, you get to learn so much more about people, right? They're like, oh, one of them, for example, one said, I'm grateful I got to go camping with friends this weekend. I took some time for myself. So that meant, one, I got to understand more of like hobbies, more about them, of like what they like to do. But really, it was indication to me that, damn, she must have a lot going on, right? She wants to take more time for herself. So it gives you this new perspective on people. So I really encourage you, if you're looking to start a conversation, or you're at a networking event, or you're having a rough day, or somebody asks you how you're doing, start with gratitude. Just ask, what are you most grateful for? You know, at a meeting or something like that. And it just sets the tone for everything. I like to do it with clients too. It's a good icebreaker. But if I were to entitle my memoir or life, my life's not that interesting, trust me. Um, it would be If I Were Me, which sounds confusing, but I'll try to explain. So for me, I'm always thinking about the future me. Who do I want to be? Where do I want to go? What does that woman look like? I'm thinking about who I am now. How are my habits now getting me to that person? Then I'm thinking about my past. Who was that young woman who was sick and hurt and struggling to get to where I am now? But then how does that contribute down the line? And then even further down into my childhood. And that actually stems from experiences I had with Lyme. This gets a little woo woo. I can't explain it. But I don't know if I was hallucinating or what. But I would start to literally have conversations. I think I was probably dreaming, but it felt way too real, of literally future me. I have a couple blog posts coming out that are clearer. But if I were me, meaning how you're never going to ever reach a point in which you're 110% everything you ever wanted to be. You're just not, because that's no fun. You're always going to be looking for something more ambitious. And I encourage you to Google his award speech. He talks about this fantastic. He's like, there's three people that I'm most proud of. One, the person I'm trying to chase, right? The person you want to be in 10 years. Your family. Thank God. And he has this great speech of describing that. So for me, If I Were Me talks about that constant conversation in my head of with my past self and my current self, and how are they all relating. Specifically with my past self is like, don't be so hard on yourself, um, but then at the same time, don't throw away everything that past self worked for, right? So that's a difficult conversation. And then the future self of like, if you want to be her or be that, this is what you need to do now, right? So If I Were Me is kind of the title that's been in my head of, if I were that future me, what would I be doing now, right? And that kind of keeps you in your core values, because people talk about their routines and their values and their whys, and it's never 110%. We all have moments, small and large, where you're like, that might not have fit, right? But it's the self-awareness to see that. And so for me, that's my title, which is a little philosophical, but for me, that's just how I think. I've been told
Yeah.
yeah, so it's a little
Yeah.
deep.
It's deep, but I think that's what it's all about. I mean, I think one thing that's frustrating, and luckily I haven't really run into it, but like, you could have a conversation, or I'll say very tangible, I could have conversations with 180 degrees of impact that, and I'm sure this will happen at some point, and it's tough to navigate, but sometimes some people like give speeches all the time, or they do interviews all the time, and so they have a response for everything, and it's like the perfect response, and it might be like a tagline or some sort of catchphrase that they came up with for everything. And I think it's important to get beyond that. Like, one thing I've talked about with a number of people I've interviewed is just that, like, if we think about social media and everything else, a lot of what we put out there is trying to put out a perfect image of ourselves. And there's for better or for worse. I mean, I think it's important to celebrate the successes, especially because there are so many non-successes or failures, or other things, other challenges. And so it's good to kind of say, like, hey, I'm winning at something, so to speak. But at the same time, I think it's important to kind of get deeper and to go there. So I appreciate you doing that. And just to like kind of reflect on some of the themes quickly in our conversation, like gratitude was a big one. There was self-compassion was another one that you were really just talking about, like sharing your story, realize that having grit, or I would also say like having resilience, appreciation for what you have, because I mean, this time of year especially, I feel like with social media especially, one thing that I see a lot of is people reflecting on how hard their year was, and to talk. And it's interesting to me to think, like, for you might say that your year was hard, or that something you've gone through was hard, whereas someone who might have gone through something that you would consider like to be, a walk in the park or like cake, they consider this to be hard. Yeah, it's really interesting to think about, but I think it's important to like celebrate and to be thankful for what we do have. And I mean, I appreciate you sharing that. And so for people who want to learn more about you and all the things you're doing, where are you on the internet?
I am at Maura Kolkmeyer everywhere. Everywhere. I try to keep all in one handle. So LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Not as active on Twitter, just because it started to become so negative and gross. However, my Instagram directly goes to my Twitter. So those are the main platforms that I am on. Everything I put out, like I said, I like to keep it all in one, because it's all me. And I think social media is a challenge right now, but it's the positivity that has to happen. So you can share the negative, but it's how you react to it, right? So 2017 honestly sucked for me because I lost a lot of friends. The opioid epidemic is a real thing. It kind of hit me out of nowhere, and a lot of my friends lost friends. And so it was, not to mention just everything else, right? I've got a business, I'm, which is moving, but it's not as fast as I would want it to be. Plus, personal challenges and kind of coming off out of my journey. 2017 was a rough year, but you know what? It's 2017. It's an amazing era to be alive. I'm sorry, it just is. So when you think about that gratitude of just how grateful I am to have the people around me, and honestly, a few of the friends I lost, the silver lining was it was people I hadn't talked to in a decade. So when I go back for the funeral, I got to reconnect with everybody from my childhood. And I'm not saying those are equal, but what I'm saying is there's still something you have to take that's positive and move forward, right? And I think what a lot of people, when people talk about gratitude, they don't understand the other side of that is that yes, you have to be extremely grateful, but you also have to let yourself feel whatever that pain or issue is. You have to let yourself feel it. The grit and the perseverance and the resilience comes from moving with it. Having the audacity to say, you know what, this hurts like hell, but I'm gonna take it on. I'm gonna own it. I'm gonna move on. Which is really easy to say when you're not in it. I get it. I get it. But you'd be surprised how just taking it moment to moment with gratitude says lets you move to the next step. So yeah, and all the socials. I'm at Maura Kolkmeyer everywhere. Maura at Sitterly Students is probably the best email to reach me. Unfortunately, I have way too many emails. I'm trying to consolidate that too, but yeah, no, I think I want to recognize you too and acknowledge you for the work that you're doing. I think it's super important for us to have positive conversations and just share, right? So I'm here to you, whoever else, however I can, whether that's a connection, a cup of coffee, a Skype call. I love just helping people connect wherever that would be. I'm based in the New York, Jersey area, but I travel a lot for work, both Sitterly and otherwise. And I'm always moving around the country. So please let me know how I can help and share all of this with you. But I want to thank you for doing this. This is awesome. Congratulations.
I appreciate it. No, thanks a lot. And I think it's so like interesting to think about. So you were talking about like 2017's been a bad year for me, and we could go on and on forever. It's crazy. Like at the beginning of 2017, my dad passed away, and like he got sick with like a rare form of leukemia and passed away. And like that's tough, but I mention it especially because I could feel like I could go on and on forever about it, and we've been going on for a long time already, but this is a great conversation. But I think it's especially relevant to mention here for a couple of reasons. Like one, like you need to take the time to, like in that case, grieve, right? And to like actively address like, or feel, like you were saying, you need to actively address like what's going on so that you could, I don't want to say move on, but so you could effectively navigate otherwise. And so like, it's like, that's a really horrible thing. And I'm sure one of the most horrible things that, definitely in my young life, the most horrible thing, but like one of the most horrible things that I'll probably face in my life, for better, for worse, because, you know, I have all these years ahead and like, so many things to look forward to. And then like there's because I've been able to like deal with that, I can also recognize how awesome it is that I'm like, I mean, honestly, doing a lot of things that I wouldn't have done otherwise. So like, for instance, like having these deep conversations where I'm learning a lot and, you know, able to share it. But I mean, for me, most importantly, connecting with people like you who have like these powerful stories to share and a lot of wisdom to share. And, you know, it's not easy, but I feel like the thing that I'm learning from you is that it's important to share your story, but also to, like, at the end of the day, realize that a lot of things come up, but like we'll get through it somehow. You've always gotten through it, and that's one thing that I just want to put out there for you, that you're going to continue to do awesome things, and it's a struggle, but that will only make, I mean, not to be cliche, but that will only make the like high points as you continue to reach those even more powerful.
Well, I think your dad would be extremely proud of you. So I hate to hear that. Nobody should have to go through that. But I think he would be extremely proud of you for doing this.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it's great because I was able to like see that and experience that, and I'm carrying it with me, and I'm excited to like going into 2018 to like continue to do this. And so this is a really good, I'm pretty sure this will be the last interview of 2017, I think, maybe, but awesome stuff that we got to share. And honestly, this is the longest, like a long interview, but I think for me, what I'll say with 108 Degrees of Impact is like it's all about the conversation and the fact that we get to connect. And I really hope people like could take the time to like listen to it and check it out and like look at snippets from the interview even as we go along. But lots of wisdom going into 2018 as we both and as like everyone tries to build their futures to get back to that. So one thing I'll say, like, to just get in my plugs for 180 Degrees of Impact, though people assuming already know where to find it because they're watching, www.lets.care is the website, and then at Let's You Care, LETSYOUCARE on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. So that's all I've got. But any final words before we sign off?
No, I am just so grateful that you reached out. We made this work, and that everything you've been through, you're still powering through. So yeah, I think 2018 is going to be a great year. 2017 was a great year. Don't get me wrong. But I'm always looking to move forward. And it's really, the scars are what makes us who we are. And we're really living, whether you believe me or not, the most peaceful and prosperous time in human history. It's the truth, so it's all about perspective. And I'm excited, whoever wants to reach out. I'm excited for you. I'm grateful for you for doing this. So keep moving on, keep pushing.
I will, and as I like to say at the end of each interview for anyone who's watching, keep impacting.